What's up, guys? My name is Isaac Poti, and I'm the host of the Tales from the Tailboard Podcast, a podcast meant for all first responders, from those defending our nation and military to those serving domestically in every state, dispatching police, fire, EMS, and even the hospital you just transferred care to. Pull in close for a no bullshit, reality-packed episode, and welcome to the show. Today's guest is Charlie Veuleman.
Warning. The opinions expressed in this content are those of the host and its guests.
Services allow that.
Doing paramedic AF.
Every car with a ballistic shield.
Things the fire service can't stand here. Same day, create a new account. Got
fast here. Like they're amazing.
Sir, welcome to the podcast. How are you? I have your bio in front of me. I'll read that off, but I just want you to say hello to the people.
Yeah. Hey guys, my name is Charlie and I'm excited to be here. This is, I've been wanting to link up and do something like this for a minute. So I'm excited to take questions from you guys, everything from, my journey, which I'll talk about a little bit as we go through, and also how it might look for you if you're looking to move, whether you're moving from first responder side to going in the hospital or, whatever. And I'm sure we'll get into some other things that are not necessarily directly healthcare related, but just feel free to ask away and don't shy away.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Charlie Veuleman is a registered nurse from Northwest Louisiana with 18 years of experience working across Louisiana, Texas, and Arkansas. He has spent a vast majority of his career in the emergency department, where he has witnessed firsthand how patient acuity and the landscape of emergency care have evolved over nearly 2 decades. Early in his career, Charlie has also gained a year and a half of experience in the medical intensive care unit, which would be the MICU, a move that helped elevate his clinical practice and prepared him for an increasing complexity of emergency medicine. In addition to his clinical work, Charlie hosts TikTok live streams that function as a community cafe, where I initially met Charlie and just been blessed to be a part of the Charlie family. Conversations naturally range from healthcare to professional topics to family life and everyday experiences. His platform emphasizes connection, open discussion, and real-world perspectives from both inside and outside medicine. Charlie is a father of 2 children, 17 and 21. He's married to his wife, whom he met in nursing school together, and they share life's adventures and passions for outdoors. He currently spends time in his cabin, which you may see in the background, that he built alongside his wife and father-in-law during the COVID-19 era, reflecting his hands-on approach both professionally and personally. Charlie, welcome to the show.
Thanks, man. Thanks. Yeah. The fun part about being married to a person who is also not only also a nurse, but also in healthcare, but also that you went to college with, is you really, I don't know, like our experiences have melded so much that, it's a lot of fun. And we even occasionally, I get to work with my wife occasionally in the hospital. And we've been running that hustle for like way over a decade now, like a decade and a half. And it's always fun to get to work alongside of her. So she is definitely my ride or die experience adventure partner in the hospital and out of the hospital. So
you guys ever get made fun of for maybe sneaking away into the closet together to get stuff?
All the time. 100%.
It's like, look, it's just the job. We have to get it done.
There's definitely some grab assing that happens occasionally, but I think it's all within reason and away from cameras. That's the important part.
That is very important. On that note, I want to kind of reach in and say, you guys went to nursing school together. So that really strikes a chord with some people, because some people study different. And in fact, on the very first episode of the podcast, I interviewed a girl named Samantha Green. She was my BLS partner at the time, but was going to paramedic school. And she had mentioned, when her husband went to EMT school, she basically said, "Ooh, that sounds fun," and went with him to do it just to have her EMT alongside him. Well, they eventually come to find out they learn very, very differently. And she likes to study out loud. He likes to study quietly. And that led to some arguments. And then think about that. Then going into paramedic school made things a whole lot worse. But I got to say, those two are like concrete. They're still together. Nothing bad ever happened. But just the stories of trying to study together. I can imagine how nursing would be.
Oh yeah, we had, we were not together as a couple during nursing school. We actually there was about, I want to say 36 people who we started with. And of that, 7 of them were from our hometown. And we would often carpool together from Shreveport, Louisiana to Carthage, Texas. And occasionally we'd be able to be in the same car together. And so it was all just friendly. And whenever school was over, that's when we kind of connected more romantically. And, but we had our eye on each other during, but it just wasn't the right time. School was crazy and everything else. And so, but yeah, and she's a very different student than I am. I think, probably quite classically as a guy, I just, not to say that all guys do this, but I just don't have the same study habits as like a type A personality woman who's going to sit in the front of the class and be glued to every word. She's a much better student than I am. And so,
couldn't do nursing school with my husband.
Mindy, no, I tell you, if we now, the landscape of that might have been very different had we been a couple first and then gone to school together. I don't know. I can't tell you what would have happened. She probably would have still been a much better student than I had been, but maybe I would have had a at-home buddy to kind of, break down some of those more challenging topics that I wasn't quite getting. So,
yeah. And I've seen that the EMS Connect guy join, Sean Pitts. He talked about being in class with his now wife and said that, hey, they just really didn't fall into it when they were in class, but afterwards, that's how things happen. And you remind me of that story. And it's kind of funny how similar things happen to a lot of different people.
Yeah. And, I know and this is not medical related, but like when my dad joined the Air Force, this was like back in the 50s. Okay. It was a long time ago. When my dad joined the Air Force, it was him and a few friends. And they told him like, yeah, you guys will stay together. No big deal. Instantly when they stepped off the bus, different ways, and they didn't see each other for a whole year. And, you think like, well, where there's a, high attrition rate and people get held back or whatever, people change their programs. Like if we'd had started together, we still wouldn't have been together the entire time in school, because at that time in 2006, the school is looking at early adoption of online education for the nurses. I think they even called it that later, the ONE program, ONE, online nursing education. And so you still do your clinicals face to face, but they basically cherry picked when they were prepping this program. They cherry picked like 7 to 10 nurses who had straight A's in the class. They were rocking and rolling. They knew they were independent learners. And my wife was one of them. So she got plucked and put into that program as that experimental program. And so even had we started together, let's say, we were together at that time, had we started together, she would have been doing something completely different than I was. And we would have not been, it was kind of the same, but different, because I would have had to have been driving that hour to Carthage and doing that time, that 8 hours a day in front of those PowerPoints the entire time. So all that to say, it worked out, and, graduated and passed, didn't lose my mind completely during nursing school, but what a challenge for sure. I had no medical background going into nursing school. I was always kind of that guy as far as, if my first degree was in hospitality management and tourism, and I was in a fraternity. And when we would go out and do, events and things like that, I was always the guy that like knew what medicines everybody was on. I was always the guy that if somebody got injured, I'd like bandage them up or try to make a decision. Do they need to go back to the city or whatever for on a camping trip or any of that? And so I was always kind of that guy, the guy that would pull over if there was an accident. And so I just always had that in me. But I went to nursing school with no like real actual medical background. Nobody in my family had any medical background. And
that's the same for me. I had nobody in my family that was a firefighter, and I just randomly was like, I want to serve my nation somehow. Air Force wasn't it, because at the time I was going to get essentially divorced if I decided to go full-time active duty. So I was like, okay, well, I want to find something to do with my time, and fell into firefighting.
Yeah, man. And I even looked, this is before nursing school, I even looked at like all kinds of job opportunities. I was going to college for hospitality management tourism. I had no clue what I was going to do. And I think that was like my fourth or fifth major selection for that university, even. Like I just didn't know. And I knew, like, when I went to school, or when I got the bug, when I finally had some friends like tell me, like, hey, look at healthcare, look at nursing. And when I got my first taste of seeing how the ER was flowing, I had a friend that like let me go just sit at the desk and watch the ER be ERing for a whole day. I was like, oh, yep, sign me up. This is it. This is exactly what I want to do.
That's pretty good, because I can't tell you. At first, I didn't want to be in EMS. Firefighting, absolutely. EMT, I had no clue, because like I go on calls that were obviously 85% medical calls, and I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. I mean, I know how to put fire out, but I don't know how to save somebody's life. Go to EMT school, and within the first 2 weeks, I was like, I fucking love this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And maybe that's like a little bit of a guy thing. It's like, and not to say that women aren't adrenaline junkies too. There's certainly a lot of that. But like, I think, had I known myself a little bit better, I probably would have went EMT paramedic first, I just didn't know. How does one become a paramedic? At that time when I'm like 18 and in my early 20s also, I had no idea how this stuff went down. And I didn't know that there were all these like community college programs. There were all these, private agency programs and things that could get you through to those licensures. I had no idea.
Mm. All right. So just before we get into the meat and potatoes of the questions here, guys, I am sponsored by End of Shift Apparel. If you go to endofshiftapparel.com and put in TFTT10, get 10% off your order when you go for a first-time customer. That works anytime we do a live. Get yourself End of Shift Apparel hats, mechanical, come and take it, CPR shirts, all branded and made in Coppell, Texas. Oh, did you like that?
Dude, I didn't realize that's what that was.
Yeah. From down here, it looks like, Hell Russia, but, whatever.
It's like, what is it? The hammer and sickle or something like that? I think? Yeah.
You're like, what is this guy really about?
Mother Russia. Well, everybody remembers the YouTuber, probably FPS Russia. Do you remember this guy?
Yep. Dude,
yeah,
amazing content.
Yeah. Back in the day, his professional Russian shirt. And I was just blown away when I found out he was from Georgia in the United States, not Georgia in Russia, So,
yeah. Dude, so his content was like, I mean, he had like the thick, almost like brilliant accent from, Mother Russia, but I don't know if anybody in our viewers knows what FPS Russia was, but if you do, legendary. At least for guy content, maybe not for girl content, but
yeah,
to each their own. What was the moment you realized nursing was the right path for you, and what did you first start working on when you became an RN?
Yeah, so I can kind of go back in that story too. So I moved from central Louisiana to northwest Louisiana in 2004 and met a lot of people. There's big medical community. There's level 1 trauma center there. There's like 8 hospitals in the town I live in. And so it was really bumping. And coming from an area where the city I came from, nobody trusted the hospitals. A little critical access hospital. Mm-hmm. No, I mean, and there really wasn't anything wrong with them. It just everybody felt like they weren't any good because an hour north you could go to great hospitals, right? That's the mindset. And in hindsight, I realized how amazing those critical access hospitals are, and the work that they do with the minimal resources they have is really phenomenal. But when I moved up, I moved up to Shreveport, started meeting all these people in the medical community, and was like, man, this is crazy. Like, there just seems like a big connection with this professional role as a healthcare provider of some sort in some level, and, success and happiness and, freedom and all these things. And so I started looking at it from that perspective and thinking like, man, this might be a great way to kind of shape and mold myself of what I want to do when I grow up. and started looking at it, and took an entrance exam for LPN school. First, I was looking at RN, and everybody was kind of getting in my head about how hard it was going to be. So I looked at LPN. I thought, okay, well, I'll learn a bunch of stuff over working for a few years. I'll get paid a little bit while I'm working, and then I'll maybe like try to go back to school for RN. And started looking at the pay disparity between LPN and RN. I was like, man, shoot, for 6 more months of school, it'll be harder, but for 6 more months of school, I can almost triple my income in our area anyway. And so I went and took an entrance exam for RN school, and I did fantastic. And so I was like, which really, there was not that much healthcare stuff on there. I think they're just trying to make sure that you're not like, a total, dud. And so I took that and I aced that, and that was awesome. I studied exactly what they told me to study, and I nailed it. And so I was able to get into nursing school by taking some additional prerequisites. I had to take anatomy and physiology at that college, and I had to take their chemistry as well. And while I was there, I went ahead and took like psychology and nutrition, a couple of other things, just to get that done. And because it gave you like bonus points for entering. And then, but to go back to your question, how did I know? It was really my friends that I met when I first moved to Shreveport, Louisiana, and one friend in particular that put me in the ER, sat me at the desk, and let me watch it all go down. And I witnessed the most chaotic flurry of things. It's like, have you ever seen anybody like on one of those variety shows juggle swords and bowling pins and like one thing's on fire? It was exactly like that, but way more organized. And it was just so much happening at one point in time. I was like, man, this is amazing. I can't believe they'll pay you to be able to do this. And again, at this point, I'm probably 24 or 25. And I'm mesmerized by it. I'm like, oh man, this is really calling me. And so I knew right then. I mean, I was like, yep, sold, sign me up. What do I got to do? Who do I got to unalive to make this happen? And start talking about it with all my friends, like all the time. It became like a constant thought where I was like, I can do this. I can do this. I can do this. And, and that was before you get in front of the class, and then you actually realize like, this is really hard. I don't know if I could do this. I don't know if I can do this. I don't know if I could do this. But I loved it. I loved watching the interaction between EMS paramedics that were coming in. I loved watching the interaction between the different services, all the different providers. And at that facility was a level 2 trauma center that kind of was sort of punching above their belt, so to speak. And, they really just didn't have all the right players in place to be a level 1. And so I really was seeing like so much happen. And, again, I go back to being a guy and having a little bit of I don't want to say like adrenaline fix or anything, but it's just crazy cool. It's like everything comes in, everything's like a rush, everything's an emergency, everything's happening all at once, and then it kind of smooths down and it chills out, but there's another one coming in behind that. And so there's always another ambulance, there's always another train wreck coming through the door, or like somebody getting dropped off in the ambulance bay and the car speeding off. I mean, there's just one thing after another, and I was hooked, man.
Good. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you for popping in for us. You've spent most of your career in the emergency department. How has the acuity and overall landscape of the ER changed over the years?
Yeah, I think I think what a lot of people don't realize about the ER is the ER kind of becomes a catch-all, and so you really are this like jack of all trades and a lot of times master of none. But as the acuities have gotten sharper and sharper, and the population that use the ER, that utilize the ER for healthcare services has increased. What we're seeing and the pressure that we feel is that the flow and the way the ER is designed is just not good for dealing with literally every single thing all the time. At 7 a.m., if you get stung by a bee, and come to the ER, like, okay, no big deal, right? But if you get stung by a bee at 3 p.m. and come to the ER, like, you got to understand, it's just different. You're not going to get back as fast. You're not going to be seen as fast as you might want to. If you get stung by 150 bees, that's different. That's definitely going to be, a different game for sure. And
you had mentioned something about the jack of all trades, and I just wanted to throw some wisdom at you here for a second. Do you know there's actually more to that saying than people realize? Yeah,
tell me.
So it's a jack of all trades is a master of none, but a jack of all trades is still better than one.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
So I mean, I would rather know a little bit of a lot of things than know one thing really well, and that's it.
Yeah. And, to kind of like deepen that thought even, an analogy I like to tell a lot of people is like, I have this MICU background, for instance, and it was awesome. So I got to do like a year and a half in the medical ICU, learned so much, could never replace what I learned. But being an ER nurse, I take that with me everywhere I go. If my neighbor falls off a ladder, I'm there. I know what to do. I can help. I can help that person until somebody with more equipment and more medicine gets there.
BSIC
from the MICU side, or let's say I was a neuro ICU nurse. Nothing against neuro ICU, but like, I'm not going to have the same, depth of skill set if I was just a specialist of that one thing as I would on the ER side. So you do kind of become like a Swiss Army knife of healthcare when you work ER and when you're in the field and when you're seeing all these various things. Thank you. And to kind of go back to the acuity thing, that sort of that comment about working in MICU plays a little bit to that acuity piece. Is as we've seen the acuity really, really grow in the ER, having that ICU background has helped. We hold patients for longer. Patients are sicker than they've ever been. The hospital itself is busier than it's ever been. We Aubrey said her neighbor's definitely a fall ladder. But we've seen the acuity go up. We've seen the population, the quantity of patients go up. And we've also seen the regulations around how we practice tighten and expand and go up. 5-6 years ago, somebody that came in for a stroke rule out workup, we didn't have the same pressures on us from a time perspective that we do now. And it's good. Like, we really should have those pressures because it is better care. But before, we had a little bit more room for clinical judgment and not so much diagnostic judgment. To start with, it all ended up being the same things were ran, the same tests, the same radiology, the same lab studies, all that ended up being ran, but we just didn't have that pressure on us. And so with the increase in the pressure, sepsis protocol, everything that walks in the door, just about triggers a sepsis protocol nowadays. You could have an 18-year-old with just the flu, and literally their vitals and presentation can make them a sepsis rule out, and that person goes back at the same time as a 70-year-old with this exact same presentation. And that 70-year-old is going to be a much more higher acuity or a higher risk patient when the dust settles on that sepsis protocol than just the 18-year-old that had the flu because he's at high school and is around all these kids, Yeah. So, but we treat them all the same. And it's certainly yielded better outcomes long term. But to go back to the first part I was saying, is like, people just don't realize the volume and the pressure that is on emergency services now. And I'm sure that you see this in your side as well, where the protocols have changed, increased, and the pressure and speed of performance just kind of keeps going up.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Is there anybody in here who wants to ask Charlie a question? I know when he does his lives, he kind of, does his thing where interacts with the chats and stuff. But is there, Aubrey Ann, Hot Mess Healer, any of you guys got a question you want to come up and ask him? Like, I'll bring you up, you can ask your question, he can answer it, and then we'll drop you back down.
Yeah. And while that's kind of the dust is settling on that too, man, I was going to say also, the last place I had a contract at was a level 3 who also kind of punched above their weight class. And whether it's critical access, level 3s and below, whatever, all of those ERs are under the same pressure. So like if you show up at LSU Medical Center, level 1 trauma center with, criteria that meets sepsis protocol, you can and should get the same things happening to you from a time perspective, order perspective, everything as what would happen at, a critical access hospital. However, the difference that a lot of people don't realize is like, okay, well, LSU Medical Center has state funding, private funding, grants. They have additional, full-time employee hours that are allotted to them. They have transport technicians. They have lab technicians. They have all these resources versus your critical access hospital, maybe in the middle of nowhere, Louisiana, is literally like that one nurse is your lab technician, your transport technician, your nurse. They also have 3 other patients and they've got heat on them about why those haven't gone to the floor. You know what I mean? So the resource is just very, very different. And I learned so much work. I learned more working in that level 3 than I ever did working in that level 1, for sure. Just because you are everything. You are all of the sides of the stretcher, for sure.
What's your take on pediatrics?
Man, I actually don't mind pediatric stuff as much. I know a lot of people get really up in arms about pediatric care. It is different. I think that you have to know it if you're working in ER, EMS, first responder world. You have to be aware of the differences in vital signs. You have to be aware of like how they die, how they change, how they get ill. It is very, very different. And, I kind of get leaned on as a resource whenever kids come in that are real sick. If they've just got the sniffles or the croup or whatever, no big deal. But when a kid's like legit looking like something's about to happen, people are like, give that to Charlie. And I think it's just that, I think it's just that I'm a glutton for punishment. No, I think it's just that I'm not uncomfortable in those situations, and I'm a parent, so I can speak to both sides of it. If you've got a 22-year-old, maybe somebody that's graduated a year ago, they've never had kids, maybe they were an only kid in their home, they've just not had a lot of time holding babies. It can be very scary for them. And, they're trying to protect themselves, and they also don't want to do a bad job caring for that patient. And so they naturally move those over to somebody who's been there a little bit longer. And I'm about 18 years in, and so I'm always the old guy. I feel like, even I'm only 44, but I'm always the more tenured one in the knowledge, and so, or in the unit. And I also got to spend some time doing peds. I managed a peds trauma ICU. I was looking for an entry level kind of management position at the trauma center to get like off of the bedside piece and kind of try to start working around that whole like management admin side. And they were like, we don't really have anything that you're looking for, but we do have this burn ICU and this peds trauma ICU if you want that. And I was like, yeah, I'll give it a try. Terrible idea. I didn't love that at all. Those are those stories coming out of those 2 units specifically are just tough. Peds trauma ICU. There's just not any good stories in there, especially at a trauma center that deals with underfunded population. A lot of gun violence, a lot of falls off of the 2nd or 3rd story of an apartment complex, a lot of ramen noodle burns to the lap, a lot of violence where somebody tried to like put a kid in scalding water to, make that go away. A lot of bad stories, man. And
non-accidental trauma.
Yeah. It's just scary stuff. And
so I don't know if you're familiar with one of the commenters on here, the Blakery content. If anybody in the comments, or if you or anybody else want to learn more about pediatric care and, pun intended, to reduce that pucker factor, Blake makes some really great content on that. He actually just had a interview with Dr. Hantevi, and they had a great conversation together. I mean, the man himself with, Dr. Hantevi about pediatrics. And so good one on that one. Blake, thanks for popping in and listening to the podcast with us, bud.
I actually, the first hospital I worked at the longest, like I gave them right at 15 years of my career, is a 4-hospital chain in Northwest Louisiana. They're doing really well. And they've got a great community name for themselves. And, one of their hospitals is actually heavily women and children's focused. They do other stuff, but they're, if somebody's being birthed anywhere in the system, they try to kind of align them to that hospital. I would go over there and pick up shifts in their ER. And so because there's so many births that happen there and there's so many pediatric offices around that hospital, that ER naturally gets more pediatric patients, particularly from the hours of 4 p.m. till about 10 or 11 p.m. They get like just inundated with peds. And I never minded it. A lot of my friends and coworkers that worked in that system, they were like, man, we don't want to go work over there. You get all them kids and stuff. I'm like, you know what? Like, it's still something to do. And so I would go over there and pick up. I'm like, man, if they don't have coverage, like, yeah, and they'll pay me a bonus, like, let's go over there and let's go do it. And so I spent a lot of time there getting very comfortable with kids. And I had this situation that happened one time. I was on my bicycle. I was training for Ironman triathlon, and which is a really long day. Don't ever do that. But I was training for this deal, and I was on the bike one day, and I felt I just felt weird. I didn't feel right, and I was having some palpitations. And I went to work the next day, and I saw one of the cardiologists, this guy Iqbal Singh, and he's his whole family's from India, but he was born and raised in New Zealand. So he's like turban, he's got like the gear, but he's a cardiologist, brilliant cardiologist, fantastic. And I saw him and I was like, hey, I'm a little worried about this. He was like, well, come to the office, make an appointment, come to the office or whatever, and make an appointment and we'll get a monitor on you. And so I wore a monitor for a few days and I logged, there was like a button on it where I could trigger, hey, I feel like an event is happening or whatever. And I didn't have to trigger it at all, but I kept a list like on an old envelope of like times and days and things that were happening that I thought might be interesting. And one of them was we were coding a kid that was like, I think this kid was maybe like 16, 18 months old. And we were coding a kid. And so when he reviewed my data and he reviewed my log, he said, this is very interesting that the time that you said you were coding a child, your heart rate went down. And I was like, well, that's weird. And so I don't know, man. I don't get nervous about it, I guess is what I'm saying. And there's like quantifiable data. I wasn't on compressions, so that's why it didn't go up. But even in there giving meds and I just, being able to stay cool, being around peds, super sick peds, it's just one of those things that it doesn't get me, it's just time to clock in, lock in, and go to work. And that's just kind of how I feel about it.
Yeah, so I think you've talked a lot about this, and that's fine. We can skip it if so, but I'm going to ask the question just in case there's anything extra you want to add on to the fact here. You added MICU, M-I-C-U experience early on in your career. How did that time shape you as a nurse for today, especially in the high acuity environments? Yeah,
so I actually applied to MICU first. I was an ER tech while I was in nursing school. And when I was getting about ready to graduate, I knew I was a shoe-in for a full-time spot in the ER. So I knew that was on lock. But I was like, let me just check out. My wife was working at the trauma center. I was like, let me just apply to the trauma center in the MI because I was kind of toying around with the idea of maybe going to gas school. I just didn't know, or going to anesthesiologist school. And so I was like, let me just apply. And I never heard back from them. I ended up working in the ER. Well, like a year and a half later, I heard from them and they were like, hey, we reached out to you, but never heard anything back. And I was like, what the heck? And we looked, they had misspelled my last name. Go figure. You could imagine that could happen. On the email address, my last name is in my email address. No. Yeah. No, not that vowel consonant disagreement.
Spell your last name just for everybody that's here.
Yeah, Veuleman. It's ridiculous. A lot of vowel consonant disagreement there, but Veuleman. And so I was like, hey, well, I'd still like to work. And so I went part-time in the ER, went full-time there. My first day in the MICU, I walk in there and my preceptor is taking report from somebody like kind of like 10 feet away, and I'm just sort of malingering around, not really, serving any purpose because I'm the fucking new guy. So I look in the room, I walk through the threshold of the door, and I look at this patient, and there's a pump with 6 pumps over here, or there's a pole with 6 pumps over here. There's a pole with 4 pumps over here. There's some gadgets I've never seen on the floor. And there's 2 monitors on this patient. One of them was life sciences cardiac monitor, and then one of them was your traditional tele monitor. And I walked backward 3 steps, and I literally looked down at the ground, and I looked over at my preceptor, and I said, I don't know if I'm smart enough to do this. And, however, it turns out that they really knew how to take a new person to that environment and convert them. They all knew I was an ER nurse. They all had their ICU idea of me. And I also worked for the competing multi-system hospital. And so, they're the trauma center. I worked at Willie K. I worked at this other facility. So I was already to them, I was new. Brand new. And they gave me a full 3-month orientation like I was a new grad. I got to learn from some of the smartest people and the smartest doctors ever. Now I see him down there. Minnie's a mess, dude. I got to learn from the smartest people and got paid to do it, which was amazing. And every time I walked out of there, I was exhausted mentally, not so much physically. The ER, especially if you've been doing it a long time, it's exhausting physically. But the ICU is, especially the medical ICU, is a damn think tank. And I left that job after, I want to say I was there 17 or 18 months. I can't remember exactly. It was a little over a year. I left there and went back to the ER full time, and I was bad to the bone, man. I just knew more stuff. I knew stuff.
Special ops for the hospital.
Oh man, it's the best.
It's like ER is infantry, and you go to MICU and it's special ops.
Yeah, I would recommend everybody. I think the MICU and the ER have more in common than they want to admit. And I think that we're really brothers and sisters for sure. I think that the MICU anybody that's going to be an MICU purist, they're going to work in MICU their whole career. It would do them a wealth of benefit to come down and work a year in ER, and the same vice versa. In today's landscape, the way the acuity looks, the way we hold patients, the way everybody is so sick. If you're an ER purist and you're going to do that, go to the MI, learn those drips, learn how to manage and manipulate those drips in a way that your coworkers have never seen. You will be just an invaluable tool. You'll be an invaluable resource because you have such a depth of knowledge. When a sick person comes in through the doors, when EMS paramedic brings you somebody that's super sick, they're coding, they're about to have literally a total come apart in life. You're no big deal.
No big deal.
Okay. Yeah. Put them in room 3. I got it.
And everybody else RN just freaked the hell out.
Yeah. And then, with that knowledge is powerful. And now you also get to sit in a spot of being a better preceptor. I mean, the things that I was able to do with students that I precepted or new grads that I precepted was way different. It was it was almost not fair, because traditionally, when somebody's new in the emergency department, they get paired with a preceptor and with that preceptor for 3 months. And so, it'd be new grad 1 is with somebody over here that's great. Don't get me wrong. They're great. But then new grad number 2 is with me, where they're getting an ER perspective and also getting vascular access perspective. They're also getting an MICU perspective. And it's just, more is more.
Absolutely. So stepping off of a more, just more of who you are, you host a TikTok live that feels more like a community cafe than a typical healthcare page. What pushed you to create the space, and why does it matter so much to you?
Yeah. So my TikTok journey is like a opportunity out of defeat, sort of. I wrote, this is during probably 4 years ago now. I wrote this this course, through Teachable, also on Stand and I've since taken them down because I'm kind of taking a pause on that, not focusing on it. But I wrote this course that would go along with a new grad that had graduated from a nursing program, and they were starting in the ER. And my idea was the new grad would have their face-to-face preceptor, but then they would also have non-case based preceptor online, and that'd be me. And so I have all these videos. There's like 3 modules a week for 12 weeks. I have all the layout for an additional 4 weeks if you're at a magnet hospital. And it would basically like be an additional teacher in their ear. And I was doing that on IG and FB. And my tax guy we were using it for a lot of like, to offset our tax liability from our regular incomes at the hospital. And it was really a win-win for the house. And at some point we had just really stalled out. We lost a lot of momentum from like marketing sales perspective of that course. And so I just stopped doing anything with it. I completely stopped. And then I was having a conversation with my tax guy, and he was like, hey man, you really need to do something with this because we're at the 3-year point and we need to figure out what to do with this LLC. If we need to convert it to an S Corp so that we can, kind of reset that 3 years where you need to be showing some activity or what. And I was like, okay, well, let me just give it another try. And I started posting on IG, posting on FB again, and wasn't getting any traction. And I can't remember who said it. Somebody was like, you ought to try TikTok. I made one post and I had more attention, more views, more comments than I'd ever had in the years of doing it on the other.
That's me. Yeah. I was on Facebook and IG to start with. And then, it's like, dude, I'm getting like maybe 3 likes on posts, maybe this, maybe that. And I pulled off the whole, like, I don't want to do TikTok like that. That's not what I want to do. Yeah. Like that, to me, that's like where the popular kids are. I'm not a popular kid. And then finally I was like, you know what? Screw it. And I got on there and I made a few posts and they just started taking off. And I was like, okay, this is my place. This is where I got to be at.
Yeah, it turns out that I'm an old person when it comes to these apps, and it's just like I never jacked with Snap, but I know a lot of people did, right? I didn't get it. I didn't fool with it. It was like, that's the devil, right? I definitely don't want my kids on there, whatever. And so every time an app comes out, like I've just been on FB and IG so long that it's just like, well, those are social media. This other stuff is just a fad. It's going to go away. Super wrong. It turns out what most people do is they kind of go along with what's new and they kind of see what it is. And if it's good and it sticks, right? And that's why there's so many people on Snap. There's so many people on TikTok.
I got scared of IG, and he's like, our IG is blowing up for the podcast page for East Coast Kellys, but like, there's a bunch of pages that I'd follow, like surgical sites and things like that, and then like the next thing you know, you get some girl twerking on there, and it's like, what the hell is going on? Like this is they would never post that type of material. Like, how is that material being posted? Yeah, and it come to find out, it's like they're being hacked.
Yeah,
and it's like
Yeah, and it's like, well, on IG specifically, there were a few accounts that I really followed and respected a lot, and I guess I thought like, okay, I can make educational content just like they are and reach an audience. But the difference is like, I did it for 3 years and had no success. They did it during that time and they had success. So like whatever they did it way better than me.
So and what made you want to do the LLC though to begin with? Like what made you go, hey, I'm going to start doing this?
We were really like wanting to make sure that we just had protections instead of doing it as a sole proprietorship. But we also didn't know what we were doing. It just seemed like the right thing to do. And at that time, the IRS had not changed it. Now you like if you go to file an S Corp, they just about won't let you. They make you do an S Corp or LLC first. But at that time, we just didn't know. We were like, okay, it'll be an LLC. We had a business prior to this. Long time ago, I had a screen printing shop, and it just seemed like the natural order of business. Like you could take a few orders as a sole proprietorship, but at some point, especially if you're going to like make any like significant money, you need to do an LLC. This is what I was told by tax people. You need to do an LLC, be protected, whatever. So I did that. And, in hindsight, I probably could have not done that. But the way that our tax guy has been with this brand, my nurse friend said, is actually my nurse friend started as my nurse friend said. Because it was going to be like, oh, well, my nurse friend said that I need to do X, Y, Z when I'm titrating these pumps. And so that was like the whole premise. And then whenever I came to TikTok, I just dropped the said piece, and it was my nurse friend Charlie. That way, whenever I'd go into rooms, people would be like, hey, it's my nurse friend Charlie. It was really easy. It just rolled off the tongue and it was simple. So, but yeah, man, I got over here and the thing just took off. And I still didn't 100% know what to do with TikTok. And I was just posting videos, posting links to the course, all that. And it was getting a lot of traction. I still wasn't really seeing any sales. And somebody said, well, go live and talk about it. Man, we started connecting with more nursing students, more nurses, nurse practitioners, even a few MDs that, aren't like, too close-minded to listen to the opinion of nurses. And the thing has just steamrolled ever since. And so you asked, like, what does it mean to you? Man, I kind of feel like it's, to me, I've like created a community of people that like understand me, understand what I'm doing, understand my background, where I've come from. And it's become like almost a water cooler. Like it's literally almost a nurse's station where
and that's what I not just coming into your lives. Yeah. Like you get to talk and hang out.
Yeah, man, it's just a good vibe. And I've had some incredibly supportive people that have said, hey, like, be damned the course. Like, we're going to throw you some coins. We're going to keep you in here. We're going to make sure that you don't lose steam. We're going to help you meet your goals. And they've just been incredibly amazing with the blessings for our family. And so I kind of mentioned this in the beginning, but since getting on TikTok, understanding how TikTok Shop works, understanding how the lives work, understanding how to use Amazon Associates and all these other like revenues, I've not had to take another ER contract. There was a very real conversation that happened in our kitchen before TikTok. And it was like, hey, I just went from being full-time ER to part-time ER and full-time in home infusion. And this is all very new. It's like 6 to 12 months old. And it's like, hey, I don't know, we got one kid in college. She's about to graduate, she's going to graduate. She's going to have like getting started in a new city. She's talking about moving from Louisiana to Texas, moving to Austin, where there's all this development and whatnot. She's interior design and architecture. And then our son is going to go to college. He wants to do aerospace engineering. He likes the idea of designing planes and things that fly through the sky. He doesn't want to wrench on them. He wants to design them. He's a math kid. It's like, then he's going to move to wherever that's at, right? Like whether it's, Boeing or Tesla or or not Tesla, what is it? SpaceX or whatever. He's going to end up in one of these jobs where he is doing that. And that's going to be in Texas or Alabama or Florida or whatever. It's like, I don't know if the home infusion deal and me being part-time ER makes sense. I might have to end up going back and like signing a sign-on bonus for a couple of years at another hospital and just grinding out in the ER a little bit. And then here comes TikTok, and TikTok is like, no, you can stay home with your family. You can, be around for your kid's senior year of high school. You can be around for your daughter's senior year of college. You can be around when your wife gets off work. And so it's really been a huge blessing to our family at how well this has gone. And I sit here in this seat saying that, and I also don't know what the next evolution of it is for me, because it's always evolving, it's always changing, right? And so we have to look at, how to keep that momentum. Do I revisit the course? Do I try to take that course more mainstream? Do I try to get hospitals to buy that course? All at the same time, the ENA has launched something similar. There's also Fresh RN just released their program. I think they're about to release an ER program. So it's like, gosh, man, I was first to the scene with this idea and I didn't have the marketing dollars behind me to really push it. And now there's big players in the space. So it makes it even harder, unfortunately.
Yeah, but you can do it better.
Maybe that's the idea, right? You know, I know the ENA has much deeper pockets than I do from a marketing and budgeting perspective. And so, you know, we'll see.
Well, it's kind of like at my point too. Like I've had people ask me like, man, you're telling people like when they ask like, hey, how do you get on Spotify? How do you do this? And it's like I'll walk you through it and I'll talk you how to do it. And somebody was like, why are you doing that? And I was like, what do you mean? Why am I doing that? Like, why are you telling them how to, in a sense, like other people with Fireman Podcast, you know, why are you telling them how to essentially beat you out? It's like, here's the thing. I'm going to bring people into the space that want to be in the space, but I can guarantee you they will not work harder than me.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, you never lose teaching somebody how to do something ever. It's, you know, at least in my opinion, like, you know, it would be really easy to gatekeep. Right. Mm-hmm. And I'll have people that'll, whether they come in the live or it's people that I precept and they're like, just tell me the shortcut to this thing. I'm like, okay,
exactly.
I'll tell you, it's fine. You know, I'll give you the
not even just a shortcut, but when somebody's like, they'll be like, hey, how do you do this? And you'll explain it word for word, how you did it and all the trials and errors that made you go to where you're at. And they're like, well, this is hard. No shit.
Yeah, I think a lot of people like run out of steam too. And so one of the things that like I kind of pride myself on is being able to do like really hard things for a really long time. Like I don't mind that our nursing shifts are 12 to 13 hours. Like it just
that's just because you're a masochist though.
Yeah, right. And it's like, okay. So I did the Ironman, right? That was like literally 16 hours of exercise. Kind of horrible, but awesome. And so, you know, I've done these Go Ruck challenges. If any of you are familiar with the company called Go Ruck, I've done a bunch of those and multi-day events. And so I don't mind. And so I think where a lot of people, they come in, they want the information, but maybe they realize at some point that the juice isn't worth the squeeze maybe for them. And we see that in the ER as well. We'll have new grads that'll come in. They'll get halfway through an orientation and they'll tap. They're like, man, this is not what I thought this was going to be. We see it in nursing school even. And, you know, look, anything worth having is hard to get. Mm-hmm. Anything worth having should require some work. If it's easy, it's not good or exciting. If it's, you know, it's not worth it. Yeah. And I feel that way kind of about everything. And, that's why I've just never let the work side of something deter me. Like I'm trying to learn a new skill right now, which is a little silly, but it's just a kind of a side quest. I'm interested in learning how turntables and things like that work, right? I love audio equipment. I mean, you guys see me, I run gear all the time and there's a ton of issues I'll have during the live events. And I love figuring it out. But this is hard. It's hard to me. I don't have a music background and I don't plan to sing or anything like that, but I'm interested in how this stuff works and how to make it work for me and have fun with it and maybe enhance the lives a little bit with it. And so, but some people get nervous about that. You know, one of the things that I hate to see from, if it were easy, everyone would do it. One of the things I hate to see is when somebody comes to the ER as a new grad, or as a student who's maybe in their last semester doing an immersion where they go like 10 or 12 shifts with an ER nurse and they get a little bit into it and they get frustrated and they get like turned off by it. I'm like, look, I am almost 18 years into this thing and I learn new stuff all the time. You can't let the fact that this is hard on day one deter you from a really cool career. There's just so DJ, my nurse from Charlie. There we go. Yeah, you can't let like the hard part deter you from the really cool ending. And I always like, you know, it breaks my heart when I see somebody come in, you know, to something like ER or ICU or even probably on your side, you probably see it too, where guys come in and they're like, guys or gals come in and they get partially through it and they're like, I don't know, you know, and it's like, no, just wait. This is going to get better and better and cooler and cooler. And to kind of go back to the preceptor thing, I think I have like the heart of a teacher. I do love to teach. I like to transplant an idea that's in my head into someone else's idea or into someone else's head. And, you know, when we get new people into our career paths, whatever it may be, if you're in a management position and you're trying to pair somebody up, pair a new person with somebody in your department, by all means, pair them with somebody that loves to teach. I've got friends that I've worked with that are badass ER nurses and they hate to teach, but they get given new grads all the time. Why in the world put those two people together? It's like oil and water, you know? And, if you don't have if you don't have that patience and a love for teaching, you know, don't make it salty for the new person coming in. There's plenty of things in the industry that's going to make them salty. We don't need to make them salty in the first 3 months.
All right, so last of the main questions, and then we'll shoot to 5 rapid-fire questions.
I like it.
Question 5 is, after nearly 2 decades in healthcare, what keeps you grounded and coming back to this work, even after the system continually changes?
Man, 3 years ago, I would have answered this question differently. I took this contract out in East Texas, and I talk about it a lot, and I don't know if people realize how good that little bitty hospital in East Texas was, but I learned more about myself. I learned more about caring for patients more compassionately out there than I ever did in my city in Northwest Louisiana. And so I think for me, what keeps me coming back to it is the ER just never lets me down. The ER is like always like it's a wild ride, but it never lets me down. I get all the excitement I want. I get all those good feels. Like, you know, in Shreveport, you're not getting hugged by a patient, you know, but in East Texas, your patients are hugging you and asking about your mama and them. And it's a very different vibe. The nursing programs out there for students are so good. They're so good around that area. And not to say that they're bad in Shreveport, but they are just so good in East Texas. And so the students are good. The patients are good. The doctors are kind. I just had a fantastic experience out there. And so what kept me coming back was I would always walk in. I was never mad about going to work. You know, some days I certainly would rather stay home, but when I pull in the parking lot, the heart rate is there. I'm excited to go in. I don't know what's going to come through the door, but I know what I'm going to get as a provider. And I know what I'm going to do for these people as a caregiver. And then I walk out of there and I was right. And that's what keeps me coming back. It's just always those good, amazing feels. I will identify as an ER nurse for the rest of my life, no matter what I end up doing in nursing. And I've got this little period right now where I haven't had to work ER in a few months, and it's been really good for our family. But I'll be back in them streets, man. I'm going to be back in that ER. You know, when our kids get settled and they're like off to school and starting families and everything's done on that side, I totally see a case where I'll be back in the ER here. This cabin that we built, as a matter of fact, last Christmas, my wife and I drove up to a little neighboring town that had a level 3 trauma center. And we literally went in there on Christmas Eve and we just walked around the hospital and we were like, yep, we're probably going to be working here in about 4 years. And we like went to the cafeteria. We walked to the ER. We like watched the ambulance bay for a little bit. And so it's just in us.
Oh, I love it. All right, man. So this next section is just rapid fire questions. Don't think too hard on it. Just tell me right off the top of your head what you got to do.
Yeah.
Emergency department or MICU?
Man, ER. I love the MICU, but damn, ER, man. It's my girl.
Best way to decompress after a long shift?
Loud rap music with dirty words.
Hell yeah. Coffee, energy drink, or straight grit to get through the night?
Dude, coffee, man. Coffee, 100%. Like chew the beans, drink the sauce, whatever you got to do.
One thing the general public still doesn't understand about nurses?
That we're actually kind of sensitive little creatures, man. We feel like we are giving a lot and caring a lot and doing all these things. And we have these big hearts and we kind of get shit on a lot. And it's not just the patients. It's like the patients might be awesome and the administrators are just on us, and everything rolls back on nurses. If respiratory doesn't show up, it's nursing's fault. If x-ray doesn't show up, it's nursing's fault. You know what I mean? And so, we are constantly under a lot of heat from a lot of sides, and the giving us grace is like, man, grace and a thank you, man, it's like the best gift ever.
Mm-hmm. This one, you can't use TikTok.
Oh, all right.
When you're not in scrubs, where are you most likely to be found?
Oh, in the woods, man. In the woods. This cabin, or like even local green spaces in our town. I just love being outside. Like I thrive on air. I don't care if it's cold or hot. I love being outside and getting fresh air. I love having my feet on the ground. I love walking. I love hiking. I don't mind having weight on my back. I'm definitely an outside guy.
Oh, love that. I'm going to end this, and then we can feel free to stay for a few moments to hang out with people in the comment section. All right, guys, this has been Tales from the Tailboard Podcast. I'm Isaac Poteet, the host of the show. My guest today has been Charlie Veuleman from Louisiana as an RN. If you came in late into the podcast, don't worry. This will be posted on Spotify and all other about 20 dozen audio-only platforms, as well as YouTube in full content form, and then parts on TikTok. Make sure you go visit the sponsor, Indushift Apparel. Go to IndushiftApparel.com. Type in code TFTT10 for 10% off your order for first-time users. Guys, it's been a blessing. Thank you. Remember, it's dangerous out there. And if you're not safe, I'm going to see you soon.
Dispatch, medic 1, show medic 1 en route.